With Chainsman chapter 206, we get into a full poetic, full circle moment with Denji and the Falling Devil because it's a throwback to when Denji was able to save Mitaka from the Falling Devil, and Denji is now the one on the other end of it. And this is beautiful writing when you get into the themes of this chapter, which we're going to jump into towards the end of this review. Mitaka being the one to save him is very, very good. And the whole Denji x Mitaka shippers are going to be going crazy right now because Mitaka defied logic to save Denji. Quick update, we're going to do something a little different with the chapter reviews. You probably noticed that I've been making the panels smaller and I've been using fewer of them. It's because I've been running into some copyright issues. So for this one, we're going to try to drastically limit the number of panels being shown until I can figure some other stuff out for copyright. So getting right into it. We open up the chapter with Denji in typical Denji mode. When faced with a devil, the first thing that he notices is that beneath those big baggy clothes, she's got a really big rack, and Denji is staring right at her breast, which leads to Yoru having to keep his mind on track by telling him, "Hey fam, that's the Falling Devil. She is wickedly strong. You might want to focus, but while you're focusing, make sure to save me." And the Falling Devil gives him permission, which is our first signal that things are about to take a drastic change, because the Falling Devil basically says, "I don't really have time to mess around with you. You are a pawn for the Death Devil, and it's my job to plunge mankind into darkness." This leads to Denji seeing the terror that she's unleashing on mankind and stepping forward with his chainsaws, ready to attack, but in the split second he decides to attack, the Falling Devil is pulling from the pits of his subconscious to make him face a new form of trauma, this time seeing the Justice twins who looked up to him as Chainsaw Man, and this is nasty work because it is once again making Denji confront the sins of Chainsaw Man. Denji is traumatized right away, reverting back to being a child in his mind, and he's quickly being lifted into the air in despair, like we saw with Mitaka previously, and he's trapped in his own mind. Mitaka, realizing what happened, manages to take control over her body, and she ignores the warnings of Yoru to not shoot with her finger because they're trapped under the rubble, and so doing so will damage their body in an attempt to save Denji. Yet Mitaka sees Denji in trouble and she doesn't hesitate. She fires off a shot, damaging her body in the process, but she manages to free herself and she rushes forward with urgency to grab hold of Denji and attempt to pull him down, but ends up being lifted into the sky herself. So let's dive even deeper here, because there's a lot to unpack in terms of the theme of unresolved trauma being heavy in this chapter, and Mitaka being the anchor here for Denji to try to bring him back down. And it is beautiful writing when you get into why she's being written as an anchor. So in Chainsman chapter 206, the chaotic return of the Falling Devil sets the stage for a chapter that is dense with emotion, action, and thematic subtext. While the immediate focus is on survival and combat, the heart of its chapter beats with a deeper rhythm, unresolved trauma. Through Denji's confrontation with the Falling Devil and Mitaka's stubborn resilience, Fujimoto is painting a brilliant picture of two protagonists weighed down by unhealed wounds and guilt that refuses to stay buried, and how Mitaka is attempting to save Denji. So starting with Denji, we have the ghost of guilt. So from the moment that Denji first interacts with the Falling Devil in this chapter, we're reminded of how trauma has altered him. Not in how he behaves outwardly, but in how he is basically hiding what's underneath. His shallow comment of calling her chess woman, it is quintessential Denji. But this juvenile humor is a defense mechanism, masking the emotional scars that he carries. This facade is instantly shattered when the Falling Devil opens her mouth, and that's where we see the Justice twins. What follows is not a physical assault, but it is a psychological ambush. A voice from Denji's past is calling out his actions, the Justice twins, accusing him of selfishly taking someone precious from them, fully aware of the pain that this would cause as he's interacting with the Falling Devil. The phrasing is very striking. "You haven't changed at all," suggesting that Denji is caught in a cycle of behavior that is inseparable of his own trauma. This moment directly touches on one of Denji's core struggles, the fear that he is a monster in human skin. All throughout this arc, Denji has been basically in part 2 having a struggle. Is he a devil or is he a human? Fujimoto's trying to make him choose, doomed to repeat the mistakes that will cost him everything, like we saw with Aki in Power to Nayuta. He has his immediate response. It isn't denial or anger, it is guilt. He doesn't defend himself. He apologizes like a child. That is why we see him as a child. His body is beginning to float. He is surrendering himself to the falling devil's influence, as if the trauma has made him hollow enough to be manipulated by the agent of death, that is the falling devil. This isn't just mind control. It is symbolic of how unaddressed trauma leaves you open to being consumed by forces that are larger than yourself. This brings us to Asa Mitaka and her role in breaking the cycle. While Denji is emotionally paralyzed, Mitaka emerges as a spiritual counterpoint. She is someone who has constantly tried to outrun her past, her mother's death, social rejection, her failure to save people that she wanted to protect. Unlike Denji, who oppresses, Mitaka, she has now moved to a point where she's confronting her trauma. But oftentimes throughout what we've seen with Mitaka's character, you could argue some of the methods were self-sabotage and bravery that borders more so on the realm of martyrdom. Yoru warns her not to fire the finger gun because the explosion can damage her body, but Mitaka chooses pain over paralysis. She acts not because it's safe, but because she refuses to let her past define her inability to change the future. She's learning that healing doesn't mean becoming invincible. It means accepting risk, accepting pain, and doing it anyway. Her action, it breaks this pattern, at least momentarily, and she survives it. It's not just a physical miracle, it's also symbolic of her emotional progress. A lot of that progress is owed to Denji. She gambles on her own resilience and she pays it off. Now she's trying to pay it forward to Denji. That closing moment where she grabs Denji midair, it's not just a callback to the prior moment where Denji saved her, it's also a turning point. When Denji saved her from that emotional despair, whereas that happened, Mitaka is now returning the jester. In that moment, in that image, Fujimoto visualizes a mutual reliance built on shared trauma. Two broken people trying to hold on to each other rather than fall alone. It's brief and it's a fragile moment of hope, and that's what makes it so beautiful. And that's what makes the Falling Devil such a good villain, because it is the personification of trauma. The Falling Devil's role is more than just a powerful villain. She is trauma personified. Her MO, it isn't to kill, but to make people relive their worst pain, forcing them to fall emotionally and physically. Her literally lifting buildings into the sky and suspending them over the civilians, creating a visual metaphor for unresolved trauma, massive weight suspended by fear, waiting to drop. Her power is less about destruction and more about pushing people to collapse under their own emotional baggage. Denji and Asa, they both teeter on the edge of collapse. That is why the Falling Devil being used by the Death Devil to drive mankind into despair is such great writing. In conclusion, they are haunted survivors. Chapter 206 is not about battle. It's about two people trying to stand up while drowning in the weight of their past. Denji's confrontation with guilt, it nearly dooms him, and Mitaka's refusal to be defined by fear is what rescues him. Trauma here isn't just something the characters experience. It's something that shapes how they move, how they think, how they survive. The Falling Devil doesn't need to strike to cause harm. She just needs to remind them of what they've already lost through very vivid imagery, subtle callbacks, and raw emotional confrontation. Chainsaw Man Chapter 206 delivers a powerful meditation on unresolved trauma, not as a past event, but as a living force that continues to pull these characters down. The question is no longer what hurt them, but can they rise in spite of that hurt? Obviously, if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and checking out more Chainsaw Man content here on the channel.